Looking back on the week that was and forward to the week ahead. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
Holy smokes, folks. The music is playing. There's a game that is being played tonight or was just played last night if you're listening on Friday, driving to work. Welcome in, everybody. It's week one. We're happy to be here. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. I am Brian Drake of FightingChanceFantasy.com, joined as always by my main man, Dwain McFarland. You know his great work over at Pro Football Focus and EstablishTheRun.com. Dwain, we got football, my friend. What's going on?
I know, man. I got my Texas Tech shirt on since that's where Camden goes now, so I get to just claim that I'm a Patrick Mahomes fan.
There you go.
I own him on 0 teams, so I just get to be a fan. Now, I own Edwards-Helaire. I own some Kelsey. I own some Tyreek Hill, so I'm still going to have fun with that. Obviously, a guy we'll probably talk about in a minute, I own Brandon Cooks quite a bit. He was a target for me, so I'm having to move off of him. Tonight I own a ton of Cobb, not in a lot of lineups, but, I own plenty of these guys. I own some Will Fuller, as well. I own 0 David Johnson, though.
I hope everybody out there had a great draft season. You all listened to our draft show. We got such great feedback on that. And now we're going to dive into what we do best, and that is game day stuff, who to add, why to add these guys. And as you listen throughout the regular season, Dwayne's utilization report is invaluable. The numbers he gets, the stats he gets from Pro Football Focus, it's awesome, guys. It really is. Not just, hey, pick up this guy because he broke free for an 80-yard touchdown, but it's, hey, pick up this guy because he played 70% of the snaps and he was, he ran a route on 90% of the dropbacks. That's the kind of information you want, and that's what we give you here on The Hustle. This will be an abbreviated show today. Obviously, one game on Thursday night, and there's a lot of wide receivers going down, so you might be panicking as you're driving to work today because – well, let's start at the top, Dwayne. Cortland Sutton sprained his AC joint in practice on Thursday, according to Adam Schefter, diving for a ball, just kind of against air. He's currently listed as day-to-day. His status for Sunday could be in doubt. That's not great. Hopefully you've got, options out there, because if you have Kenny Golladay, he's practiced on a limited basis because he injured his hamstring on Wednesday. Not ideal. Maybe a bump up for Marvin Jones.
He didn't practice at all today, right?
I don't know.
It was a DNP today, I think.
Yeah, not good.
That's bad.
So in that offense, you've got Marvin Jones, you've got Hawkinson, you've got 8,000 running backs. We'll see what they do with those guys. Maybe you've got Mike Evans. Well, guess what? He's got a hamstring injury. He finished last year on IR with a hamstring injury. That is not ideal. Bump up Chris Godwin, Gronk. You might see some 12 personnel now, O.J. Howard. Deontay Johnson for the Steelers, another guy we were on last year. He didn't practice today with a foot injury. Maybe he gets in. It's just a day of rest. They do play Monday versus the Giants. We'll see what goes on there. Juju's there. Claypool, the rookie. Washington. Let's see. How about, maybe you've got Jalen Reagor on your team. Well, guess what? Jalen Reagor might play, Dwayne. Yeah, hurt himself 3 weeks ago, injured his shoulder, but he was a full go in practice, and it looks like he might actually get out there. That would be a huge boost for an Eagles team severely lacking weapons. So that's kind of the wide receiver rundown, Dwayne. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, there's kind of two things, right? One, if they're on your team and you're dealing with the injury, and then there's number two, you may have some of the other players that you mentioned that are you don't have the injured player, but you have somebody that could see, an uptick. So like O.J. Howard was a really good example that you gave. We already know that they're going to run more 12 personnel anyway. So probably going to be some more targets for O.J. Howard if, Mike Evans is out of this game. Scotty Miller will probably be on the field pushing the vertical boundary. Not somebody that you're going to want to use in most leagues, but if you're in a super, super deep league, I guess 14-teamer deep bench, who knows? Scotty Miller may be, your guy. I don't know what your league looks like. But as far as, the Lions, it's good for Hawkinson. If you're a Hawkinson owner, and you drafted him and you like his upside, well, it's a great week, to get him in the lineup if Golladay is not going to play. Obviously Marvin Jones, we know that he's very capable, as well. So those guys both get boosts. On the Deontay Johnson thing, if you're in a shallower league it'll be tough. But if you're in like a medium size or deeper league where you've got a little bit more roster room, I mean, a guy that you could pick up that's available on a ton of wires is James Washington. He went undrafted, a lot. And so while they don't exactly play the same role, he would probably be the next in line in pecking order from a standpoint of getting targets. So I think Washington's a guy that you can probably pick up easily if you own Deontay Johnson, especially since it's a Monday night game. And if you're needing him and you need one of those two options, if you can pivot, if you've got a really strong option already, you can go with that. And you don't have to worry about picking up Washington. But that's going to be an option. And then, as far as guys that are just sitting, on the wire, Drake, you mentioned one, a lot of people, shied away from Rager because of his injury, here over the last, week and a half, 2 weeks of drafting. So if you're in a shallower league, Rager may be available. So that's a name to check on. I mean, here's a few that just absolutely, Drake, you shouldn't be on your wire, if you're facing one of these injury situations. So you've got Bryan Edwards, in Vegas. Then you've got, still feels weird saying Vegas.
I know.
Then you've got Chenault in Jacksonville. And then you've got Randall Cobb. But if you're going to do something with Randall Cobb, if you're listening to this on Friday morning, it's too late because he's playing tonight. And
Cooks is going to play also. People ask about Brandon Cooks. He's going to play, could be limited.
But I would not start him. There's no way I would start him. Based on what I'm hearing, they're going to limit his snaps. I'm out. I'm not playing Brandon Cooks tonight. I own him a ton. I have him out of every single lineup.
Wow.
I don't trust it. His game is built on speed. And as soon as he opens it up, I don't know. I mean, is it going to flare up on him? I honestly wish they would just deactivate him tonight, let the guy get a whole full week and a half to recover, be ready for week 2. The worst thing that can happen here is he gets out there and opens things up, and all of a sudden, he just makes his injury worse. So I'll live with it. If all of a sudden he goes off for 100 yards and 2 catches, great. But you know what? In my history of doing this, typically when a guy has this kind of injury, quad, hamstring, groin, whatever it is, and they've been really limited, and hardly used in practice. When they try to go out there and play, Drake, it's usually not good.
Yeah, this is tough. Luckily, it's week 1, folks. You should have enough options on your bench to be able to fill in with some of these wide receivers. But wow.
Well, Devontae Parker too. Devontae Parker's limited with a hamstring. And he's got a tough matchup against Stephon Gilmore. So I own plenty of Parker, but I'm trying to find ways to get him out of my lineup. It's already a tough matchup with Gilmore, but now if you're going to be gimpy, let's see what we hear over the next couple of days. But Parker's a guy that you just need to be ready to pivot off of on Sunday. And Gesicki has also been limited. So they could really be in trouble. Obviously, Preston Williams has been limited because he's coming off of, a knee surgery from last year. But all accounts say he's looked really good. I mean, he could be in line for a huge amount of volume, this week. And they probably don't want to put that on him out of the gate. But I mean, that could be what's coming for Preston Williams.
Another guy out there who's limited, Mike Williams. He was limited in practice today. We'll see what happens. I don't know if anybody really wants to put Mike Williams in their lineup.
There's no point in starting him anyway.
Yeah. Let's hit a couple of other guys here. Brandon Ayuk returned to a limited practice today, while Deebo Samuel remained limited and didn't really practice much today. So, again, either of these guys, I don't know if you want to play either of them. And we got a question in our chat room, Dwayne. Is Kendrick Bourne a guy you could take a shot on this week?
Yeah, Bourne is a guy that, I mentioned some of those names earlier. He is a deeper one. Bourne, Steven Sims, and Marquise Valdez-Scantling, if you're in deeper leagues where all the stuff I named is already gone, I think those guys are all potentially viable. I would not play Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel didn't practice at all. He was on the sideline today. I do not expect him to play this weekend. And Brandon Ayuk is still coming off of an injury, and he's a young player. I think there's a lot of promise with him. But to put him in your lineup this week, unless you're in like a super deep league, I just would not be risking it. So, yeah, the Kendrick Bourne thing, could be that actually could end up being something, where you get 5-6 targets, maybe 80 yards, and you cross your fingers for a touchdown. But I think if you could get, 12, 13, 14 points out of a guy like Kendrick Bourne, he did his job.
Let's look at the running backs here. Miles Sanders, we got to get our Eagles talking, of course. He was limited today in practice. Now, his outlook is pretty good. Everybody around the team says he's going to play this week. His offensive line is a little banged up. We know he's got a new right guard with Brandon Brooks going down. We're kind of iffy, but we're leaning towards Lane Johnson playing on the right side. Washington has a really good front seven. So they're going to get pressure, and I don't know how much running room Sanders is going to find. He might have to get it done in the passing game. But if you've got him and he plays, I think you got to put him in your lineup. What about – here's a guy, Dwayne, David Montgomery, someone we were kind of out on a few weeks ago, and you actually clued me into this, I think, last night. I think this is 2 straight days of full practices from Montgomery.
Today was his first full, but he's been trending in the right direction. And to me, he's a player that when it happened, it's similar to Miles Sanders. I think it happened early enough. They just said, we're not risking anything. We're just going to let him we're going to let him rest. And so I think the fact that he got a full in, if he's sitting on your bench and you have any of these receivers that are hurt, I'm all about, you could put David Montgomery in the game. You're going to still need to watch and make sure that he's active on Sunday. But if you don't have to use him, like if you're not faced with one of these injury issues and you don't have to use David Montgomery, he's basically a guy that you stash because people let him fall. Like Drake grabbed him last night way too late in a draft with some guys. If you're that kind of owner of David Montgomery, I'm not putting him in my lineup yet. I'd rather keep him on my bench. But if you need him because the rash of receiver injuries that we're getting right out of the gate, I would not be afraid to use Montgomery. One thing I would say on Miles Sanders is they're saying they're going to limit his workload. So that could be, if you've got a flex position, I mean, Boston Scott could be a sneaky flex play, this weekend in deeper leagues. Not if you're in a 8-man shallow bench, 10-man shallow bench, or, I wouldn't worry about Boston Scott being in my starting lineup, unless you're starting like 5 flex players. But if you're in a deeper league and you've got a lot of flex plays, and you've got one of these receivers that's hurt, Boston Scott's another name that you could potentially have on your list if he wasn't picked up. But most of the time, he was drafted.
Golden Tate, if you're really scrounging for a guy, he's kind of iffy with a leg injury, so who knows about him. AJ Green, though, did get in his first full practice since 2018. That's a good thing. A lot of folks out there are asking us questions about him. Dwayne, let's go to a thing I like to call jumping the wire. What we do here on the show most weeks is kind of pinpoint folks you could pick up and try to get ahead of your league. And this is a great time to do it because maybe your league mates have drafted their team. They're kind of set it and forget it. They don't even realize they can pick somebody up. But you can always churn the bottom of that roster. So I just want to give you a couple names of guys who might be out there chilling on the waiver wire that we like and could help you down the road. At quarterback, we'll start there. And this is fairly obvious, I think, but he's not owned in way too many leagues. And that's Cam Newton. Cam Newton should be owned in every single league. The guy's a former MVP, and he's playing for the Patriots. Bill Belichick calling the shots there. So if he's out there, grab him. A couple other guys I like, Dwayne, Gardner Minshew and Tyrod Taylor. Taylor playing against I believe a Bengals team that last year gave up the most rushing yards to quarterbacks.
Yeah, and if, for example, like you're worried about a potential COVID-19 thing, you got to look at your late games on Sunday. So that means you've got to either take the backup and carry the backup to the quarterback. So if it's Dak, it's Andy Dalton. If it's Drew Brees, it's Jameis Winston. So if there's a decent backup, I don't mind doing that, right? So that's what I'm doing on my Brees and on my Dak teams, just in case something happens. I've got their backup, and hopefully they haven't been around each other. Basically, they both have it. But if you're not wanting to do that, and you'd also rather just say, well, I'd also rather just get a free look at a quarterback, like your Monday night game, a guy that's not owned very often that, one of our film junkie buddies, Jay Moyer, loves is Drew Lock. Now, if Cortland Sutton's out, that really hurts him. Then you're depending on Judy. Hamler's been dealing with a hamstring injury. Melvin Gordon's kind of got a rib issue that he's, kind of working his way through. But Locke plays on Monday night. And another guy that often isn't drafted is Ryan Tannehill, and he plays on Monday night. If you're in a shallower league, you've got the Steelers. So Roethlisberger may be available here and there. Every league I was in, I saw him drafted. But, there's potential that he's a guy that's also available. Daniel Jones was probably drafted in most leagues, but I really don't want to play him against the Steelers defense.
No, I hear you. How about at running back? This Jaguars running back situation is kind of a mess. Ozigbo, I believe they put on the short IR, so he could come back in 3 weeks. You've got Armstead, who's on the COVID list. So that leaves us right now with James Robinson, the lost Black Crowes brother, James Robinson. You haven't seen him in a while. And Chris Thompson, the pass catcher that we've been touting for a while. If you're in a full PPR league, I'm all in on Chris Thompson. this team's going to suck. He's going to be on the field a ton catching passes. What do you think of James Robinson, a name that really has kind of popped up on Twitter a lot over the past week?
I own him a ton. I was drafting him super late, or in the first for my teams I drafted earlier, before all this news hit. I grabbed him for like, $15-20 out of my 1,000 and Fab, when everybody else was getting those Igbo. So I kind of got lucky, because then last night I saw in the FFPC people spending like $700, $800, $900. There was a guy in my fishbowl league spent all 1,000.
Oh my God,
$1,000 all on Robinson. So what I'm doing with Robinson is I'm leaving him on my bench, unless I really have to have him in there, because I'm not sure still how much work he's going to get work, but he needs to be out there on the passing downs at least a little bit, right? Or he's not going to carry much value in a crappy offense. Yep. Remember what we said about Fournette. We didn't like Fournette in this offense because how often are they going to be inside the 5? How often is he going to get to catch passes if Chris Thompson's out there? Well, all the same things still apply to James Robinson. Now, he could come out and show that he's, a viable option to do more than just be, a first and second down guy. So he definitely needs to be rostered. But I try to keep him, I don't have him starting anywhere. And I'm dealing with a lot of these receivers issues. I'm trying to avoid him. He's a great unknown. If you absolutely had to in a pinch, I would guess he's going to be good, Drake, for 10 to 12 carries at a minimum and maybe 2 or 3 targets. I think that's kind of, the bottom end of what you're going to see from him. They don't really have anybody else. Mm-hmm. But if they're trailing, it's going to be, to your point, the Chris Thompson show. And I would feel fine about flexing Chris Thompson, this weekend.
I asked our good friend Matt Waldman, who puts out the rookie scouting portfolio, give me a breakdown, the elevator speech on James Robinson. And here's what Matt told me. He said, low center of gravity, quicker than average, some skill with the gap blocking game, must prove value as a zone runner. Ball security has been a problem. So take that for what you will. It's funny. I asked him that like 2 or 3 days ago. And just today, some rando guy on Twitter responded like I was asking Matt a fantasy question and was like, hey, you should add him on your bench for depth and see what happens. Thanks, Chief. I appreciate it. I wanted to put like the Conor McGregor.
Get him on the show, Drake. Get him on the show. Like, give me a night off.
Who is that guy? The one where Conor McGregor does that? Like, thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. Some other guys.
I could use a night off, Drake. I got all these waiver wires to manage. You could probably just get this guy on.
Yeah, really. We'll hit him up. It'll be a new show. Don't worry. Let's see. How about Joshua Kelly? I've drafted him in so many leagues, Dwayne, and people just always look over and they're like, who? What? They don't understand what's going on with the Chargers and who this rookie out of UCLA is.
I don't even want to address this, because if you've been listening to this show, you drafted Josh Kelly. And if you didn't, you don't listen to this show and you don't read anything that I have out there. He's my most owned player. He should be rostered every single, in every single league, unless you play in like a 2-man league, great. But, he should pretty much be rostered in every single format, because of the potential for him to take over the majority of Melvin Gordon's role. We don't know what's going to happen for sure, but just on the chance that he comes out and does that right away, he needs to be on a roster.
AP is gone. Darius Geis is a douchebag. He's gone. So now we're left with Antonio Gibson and Bryce Love out of Stanford.
JD McKissick.
Yeah, don't forget about him for the week. He'll be healthy. Bryce Love, any interest?
Again, a backfield that I would rather stay away from if I can. The guy out of that group that I have starting a couple of times in one of my flex spots is Antonio Gibson. He has the biggest upside, out of all of those, in my opinion. And if there's going to be an RBBC, we always expected it to be a running back by committee. It was never going to be Antonio Gibson getting everything. So it's funny. Now the news comes out and says, because Rivera says it'll be a committee. Well, yeah, we knew it was going to be a committee.
Right.
We knew it was not going to be, Antonio Gibson gets the whole backfield. What I would expect, though, is he's going to still see plenty of targets. I will be, paying close attention to this game, because I do want to see how much is McKissick going to eat into his passing role. Now, I know in training camp, as much as the reporters were allowed to say, they were running the two of those guys on the field together a lot, So, because again, remember, this is a team that's starved like for any kind of playmakers, Drake. It's like, hey, we got McLaurin, and I think Sims could do something, but you got a guy, 29-year-old, tight end, and Logan, who's a he's turned from a quarterback, at Virginia Tech now into, a tight end. And God bless him. He's been on this journey for a while, and he is an athlete, but I don't know what you're going to get out of him. Antonio Golden Gandy is a rookie, a late round pick. So I think there is some room, for there to be a few guys here that are going to get some work. I don't think we're going to be super excited about it. If it's all of a sudden split across everybody, we need like one or two people to step up in this offense, and then we kind of know who we want to own and we just move on. But I think Gibson's going to be, he'll be squarely in the mix.
Make sure you're checking your wire for those premier handcuffs. Darrell Williams, which maybe if you're listening to this on Friday and CEH broke his leg and now Darrell Williams is the hot ad, but we're recording this.
Add him now. If you got room, to your point, do it now while you can do it for nothing or a minimum bid, and you get a free look, at a player. Now your league may have a rule you can't drop him on Friday. So you just have to think about how that may, manage what that may do to your roster for the weekend. If you've got to carry a player like that.
Know your rules.
Someone else. Yeah. So know your rules. But you want to get him on a roster. I mean, it's a free look, like you said. And who knows? We could come out tonight and all of a sudden they're literally splitting at 50%. I talked about it before. Andy Reid has traditionally had a second back, except for like 2 or 3 years that he used inside the 5. So that's probably Darrell Williams. And that's what nobody's talking about. That's really going to be his role. I don't see it being 50-50. He's going to get some pass protection stuff. But the Chiefs don't really keep their backs in a ton to block. Usually they're releasing them into the routes. So I think CEH should be okay there. I do think Williams will get a little bit of work. But I'm kind of thinking, it's like probably like 60-40, 55, 45, kind of thing. And then, Darwin Thompson could get involved, a little bit as well, Drake.
Tony Pollard, Darrington Evans, just check your wire, see if those guys are out there. And if you're watching us on YouTube at the Fantasy Football Hustle YouTube channel and you hit that subscribe button, you're seeing our brand new flashy overlay. Look at that. We look good for 2020. Thanks to our guy 5 Yard Lee from the 5 Yard Rush podcast.
Absolutely.
Give him a follow at 5 Yard Lee on Twitter. He does a hell of a job for us, so we thank him. Okay, wide receiver. You might be looking for some guys hitting the wire. We mentioned a few. Brashad Perriman. Maybe Deshaun Jackson in a short league is out there. Alan Lazard. Dwayne, your boy Paris Campbell and Laviska Shenault could be out there. Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, Jeudy for sure now with this deal with Sutton. I mean, a lot of these guys are all drafted. We get it. But, we don't know the format of your league. If you're an 8, 12, 14, we have some people talk to us that are in a 16-person league. Haven't heard of a 32-person league yet, but I'm sure we will. So depending on how your league is set up, but absolutely, I mean, I mentioned them earlier. Paris Campbell, Laviska Shenault, Curtis Samuel, Brian Edwards should all be rostered. Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Reagor, N'Keal Harry, and if you're in a deeper league, some of the names that still may be out there. I mentioned Steven Sims earlier. He is playing all the downs. He's not just a slot receiver anymore. He's actually going to be the Z. McLaurin is the X. So they're going to move him inside. They're going to move him outside. He'll work a lot of the underneath stuff, the timing kind of stuff that actually Haskins can be pretty good at. So Sims is a name that if you're in a super deep league and you need somebody, I mentioned Valdez-Scantling earlier. He's the third, receiver in this mix. But, he could come out and have a big week 1, right? And we don't know for sure how much 11 versus 12 and 21, the Packers are going to run. But it won't be anything where 11 is their main group. But if the Packers, are in situations where we know that they're going to trail, that could make, Valdez-Scantling pretty valuable on some weeks. And there's still a chance he could just overtake, Lazard. Denzel Mims, you mentioned, he's at least back practicing. Brashad Perriman is back practicing. So those guys are, they're all viable as well. And super, super deep, like Skank League, Olabisi Johnson, is the starter on the other side at Minnesota.
This is 2 a.m, drunk at a bachelor party Skank right there. Like, oof.
That's pretty bad. We mentioned Scotty Miller, Quintez Cephas is a guy that I'm talking super, super deep leagues.
Hey, if Galladay doesn't play.
Yeah. And so, and plus, Danny Amendola's dinged up right now too. And Cephas has had a great camp. So there's a chance there. John Ross is another one. John Ross is what I've heard is it's going to be a rotation at the third. They have him listed as the starter, but what the coaches have said, it's going to be him, Higgins, and Tate, basically rotating. and it's going to kind of be like a running back thing. Who's the hot hand, or based on what they want to do out of a certain package, who's going to be on the field. But, we know with a guy like Ross, and, Higgins has got that, some, deep ball ability as well. With Ross, the cool thing about him is it just takes one play.
Mm-hmm.
If you just get him the ball, one play, and it can come from in space, or it can come, over the top. So as long as he's healthy, he can score in multiple ways. So in a super deep league, I wouldn't be opposed to, Ross, and then even Auden Tate. Again, super, super deep leagues.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't really want to be starting any of these guys. If I hear any of you guys come back and say, hey, you told me to start this guy. No, we didn't. Not unless you're literally like, in a 16-person league. So that's really the bottom of the barrel, though, Drake, all those guys. Cole Beasley is typically available everywhere, So, I mean, if you're just looking for kind of I don't like that kind of play. Because I don't even know what his floor is anymore with Stephon Diggs in the offense.
Well, thank God. I can't believe it's week 13. Oh, it's week 1 and we're dealing with this. Holy jeez. My God. If you need some tight ends, Gesicki, Ebron, Jack Doyle, check your wire for guys like that. Any defenses or kickers you like before we get to some questions from the fans?
Yeah, I mean, Indy is a great defense. You get to play them against Jacksonville right out of the gate. Their schedule for the first 4 to 5 weeks, they're really, when you look at their whole schedule, it's really pretty good. It's got a few spots on it, but overall, it's a really good schedule. If they're not available, Tennessee's similar. They'll play Denver on Monday night.
Just added Clowney.
Yep. So Tennessee's a great one. Indy's a great one. As far as a kicker, I mean, I put Ryan Suckup in my top 5 immediately. He's playing on the Bucks. So if you were drafted, if you waited on kicker and everybody else took all the really good kickers and you have one on your roster, like, Brandon McManus or something like that, where you're just like, oh God, I got to have a guy, by far, go pick up Suckup. I would say Robbie Gould is probably the cutoff line for where I would keep who I already had versus, going and picking Suckup. And then Blankenship, Ricardo Blankenship, who won the battle for the Colts kicker role. So he's also a guy that I would keep an eye on. I think that offense is really going to be geared, in a way, and the way they're going to play football this year, that there could be quite a few, field goals for the Colts.
All right. A couple of folks in the chat room here and hit us up, and some friends at FF Hustle on Twitter. All right, Dwain, who should I start? David Johnson or Miles Sanders at flex?
I'm starting Miles Sanders, but I'm anticipating that he's going to, share. But if you were to start David Johnson, I don't blame you. I think if you're going to do it a week, this is it. This is the week that you do it. I mean, the fact that Sanders is still limited, I get it if that concerns you. That's a good question, because I don't own, David Johnson any, so I'm not faced with that question, against Sanders. So I personally would probably still lean Miles Sanders, but I don't blame you at all if you went with David Johnson. It's a really close call. Can
someone get your rankings weekly at PFF? Are you updating them?
Nope, I'm not doing weekly rankings, but I am going to be doing, everything as far as, I talked about this a little bit. Actually, I don't know if we talked about it last week. I'm getting all my pods confused, or it may have been on Matt's pod, but the utilization report is going to have some major upgrades to it. Ooh. So you're going to know how often, like a player is the first read versus, the next read. We're going to talk about which players are getting the ball versus zone versus man. I'm going to talk a little bit about, the player's ability to execute against press. I mean, there's just a ton of cool stuff that's coming in the utilization report. And so right now I'm, 100% focused on that. And they've got several of the other guys, doing the weekly rankings, and just with me having a full-time role, I can't, it's tough for me to do weekly rankings and feel good about what I'm giving the audience. Right. I don't want to do it and just halfway do it. If I'm into something, I want to be able to fully commit. And, just right now from a work-life kind of balance thing, like I got to keep some balance, like somewhere. And that's where it is. I may do them in the future. I'll be doing some articles, and things like that. So you're still going to get ideas that I have around rankings and players for certain weeks. And then of course, we'll cover that all here.
Couple more questions for Dwain McFarland. You can find him on Twitter at Dwain McFarland, DWAIN McFarland. I'm at Drake Fantasy. You can follow the show at FF Hustle on Instagram, on Twitter, and we're on Facebook also, and of course here on YouTube. Dwain, PPR flex, Tyler Boyd or Mark Ingram?
Tyler Boyd.
All right, we got a tight end question. Jonnu Smith, Chris Herndon, or Dallas Goedert?
I'm going with Herndon. With how much time Mims and Perryman have missed, they're just now getting back.
Mm-hmm.
And Crowder's even been a little dinged up. I don't even know how many of their receivers are going to finish the first game. We're going to find out if Herndon's any good, right? Because just because you're the only person on the field doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a ton of targets, because you actually have to be able to get open. The quarterback's got to trust you. But everything we've heard in camp so far has been that Darnold really is looking to Herndon a lot. And, he's a guy that we were excited about last year before, last year you had to draft him knowing that, he had the suspension. So it's kind of a waste of a roster spot. But it's a guy that when you talk about the talent's not really, ever been a question. He's not an elite talent or anything, but, people definitely like what he has to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And so Herndon's the guy that I'm going to lean, to in week one. You could potentially swing to Goddard if for some reason, Rager ended up not playing, or there's some other kind of injury news, that comes out. I mean, I'm fine if you want to swing, to Goddard. But Jonnu, I really like him. I just want to see how this is going to look, with him, because it's not like Jonnu Smith hasn't had some opportunities before. Delaney Walker's been hurt multiple times over the last couple of years, and Jonnu Smith has been out there now, and he's also gotten hurt. He's a great run after the catch player, but I just want to see. I have high hopes for Jonnu Smith this year, and I really hope they're going to integrate him into their offense, kind of the way that Darren Waller is integrated into the Raiders offense. Then you could really have a great combination between him and AJ Brown. But I want to see it, for a week.
Couple more for you. We'll go rapid fire here. Dobbins, Boyd, or CeeDee Lamb at the flex?
What kind of league?
Yeah, they didn't say.
Dobbins, Boyd, or Lamb. I would go Boyd.
Yeah, me too.
I just, Boyd's going to get 7 to 9 targets. Pretty much is going to be, a lock. Next, I'm going Lamb easily. Dobbins is last on that equation. I would not start Dobbins this week.
No.
We've already heard Gus Edwards isn't even going to be gone. They're going to use them all now. And so it's just a great offense. And if everybody's going well, I mean, I don't know what to say. It could be a real just mess. I'm glad that I don't own much of any of that. And when I did get Dobbins, it was late just because it's going to be problematic. Dobbins, if you drafted Dobbins, we talked about this. Maybe you took him in the 6th or 7th round. When you took him, you needed to know that you're not starting in week 1.
Mm-hmm.
Your plan is to roster him and plan ahead. Now, who do I take in the 8th and 9th round? Now, in this particular question, you probably took CeeDee Lamb the very next round, or maybe even you got Boyd and Lamb in back-to-back the next 2 rounds. So don't trick yourself into starting Dobbins because you drafted him earlier. You should easily start, Boyd and Lamb in that situation. And I don't even care if it's PPR or not.
What do you make of the Rams backfield this week?
If you can avoid it, you should, just because we want to see what's going to happen, right? The way we've talked about Akers is if you can get him, we think he's going to have the best chance to win this backfield, but we really wanted you to grab him as your running back 3. If he's your running back 2 and you don't have another option, like you don't have a Chris Thompson or someone like that on your bench that you really like, then you may have to, kind of ride with him. If you're looking at him versus Leonard Fournette, I get it. You may just ride with Akers. There's a chance that he's the guy that comes out and has the hot hand right away and, gets 50% of the carries, on Sunday. But they are going to be playing against another good offense, and there's a chance that the Rams fall behind. And so I would like to keep him on my bench, and I want to see how the Rams are using these backs. What I want to see is hopefully Akers is getting some of the work in the passing game. You're really looking to see who's out there on 3rd downs. Obviously, you're looking to see who looks like they bring the most spark to the offense. It sounds like Darrell Henderson will play. If Henderson doesn't play and he's a scratch, that increases the odds for Akers. And at that point, you may swing back his way a little bit more against some of your other tougher calls. But if all 3 of them are active, I don't want to start, Akers this weekend if I can avoid it.
Last question. Hey, we got a shout out from Brazil. So hooray us.
Awesome.
We're big in Brazil, apparently. Okay, last one here from a guy in the chat room. Again, thanks to all the folks who catch us live. If you're following us on Twitter at FF Hustle, you see when we go live, and you can get in the chat room on YouTube and talk to us. Okay, last one for Dwain before he gets out of here and does waivers for 700 high-stakes leagues. Diggs, Boyd, or Hollywood Brown?
Diggs, Boyd, or Hollywood Brown. PPR?
We'll say it is.
If it's a full point PPR, I'm going Boyd. If it's a half or less, I'm going Hollywood.
There you go. Folks, we hope
there's a trade up there. I'll answer real quick. So Ingram, and I'm assuming it's not the tight end. They've got the eye. So Ingram and Goddard for Montgomery and Waller, 0.5 PPR. Yes, all day. I like Waller way more than Goddard, and I like Montgomery, more than Ingram as long as his health holds up.
Interesting. So we'll kind of do this all week, every week, guys. We do the hustle here, and okay, last guy, Ruggs or Gibson at the flex, rookie on rookie crime.
And a half PPR.
Yeah.
This week, I'm probably going to lean to Ruggs.
Yeah, me too.
Just because I know he's going to be on the field. I know what his role is. They've told us he's going to be out there pretty much the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And with his ability, all he needs is a play or two, where if he gets some space, he can do some things run after the catch. I think they're going to have him schemed up pretty heavily. They're going to move him all over. What I will say is I get it. You put Gibson on the bench, and it sucks sometimes, we all face this challenge. You leave a guy on the bench week 1 just because you want to see what happens, and he blows up. You just have to be at peace with it. All you can do is follow, a decision process. And the process that I would look at is you can take a player that's going to be on the field, we know, for the whole time, and is going to be, he's going to be getting looks, or I can take a player where I'm not quite sure exactly what's going to happen. I'm really excited about him. He has really good upside, but he could also just play 30% of the snaps. I think he's going to play more than that, but I just hate to steer you wrong, right? And he doesn't. I think he's going to get at least half the snaps. So he does carry more upside. But again, Ruggs can break big plays. He could easily – would it surprise anybody if in week 1 Ruggs – and I'm not saying he's going to do this every week, but you could easily see him put up a stat line that's like Henry Ruggs, 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. He just got loose. He's going to have a week like that this year. Who knows what week it is, but, week 1's as good a chance as any because defenses, are going to be behind. They're going to be behind the offenses.
Yeah. Okay, last guy, our buddy Axel here. He hits us up on Twitter all the time, so we'll get to his. Eric Ebron or Dallas Goedert in a PPR?
That's another one's really close. I'm going Goddard just because I know he's got some sort of a role in the offense. I think they're going to both be challenged with how much can they be on the field. I don't expect to see either one of them on the field for over 50% of the snaps. What you're hoping is they're on the field for at least 60 to 70%, of the dropbacks. I don't know if either one of them are going to get to that either. You're kind of hoping that, you get a touchdown reception. It's tough because the Steelers play on Monday, Drake. Yeah. If I knew Deontay Johnson wasn't going to play, that might swing me a little bit more towards Ebron because now that we know that Rager could play. But it's a really close call, and honestly, it'll probably come down to does one of them score a touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Folks, we appreciate you here watching on YouTube. Go over, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you're never missing an episode. If you're listening on iTunes, please give a 5-star review. Tell a friend to tell a friend and promote the hustle because it's just growing like wildfire, folks. This was a great offseason. Now we're into the thick of it. It's 2020 kickoff. It's Texans. It's Chiefs. There's like 7 people in the stands, but whatever. Crack a beer. Enjoy it. If you're listening on Friday or Saturday, good luck this weekend. You can hit us up on Twitter. We'll try to find you and help you make the right call. For Dwain, I am Brian. We'll see you. Good luck in week 1 and never get out hustled. See you guys.